So our question view model is ready to be used. Let's go ahead and look at our main activity. Let's not forget, because this is easy to forget, we need to also say at the top here, at Android entry points, so that Hilt knows that main activity will be getting access to all of these dependencies that we've put together throughout. Right? Let's put this in the code like this. So let me get rid of all of this, because we don't need any of this for now. And of course, this is going to go away. That's fine. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a composable here called at, say composable. And let's call this trivia. It's going to be a function, of course. Trivia home as such. Right? Now our trivia home here, we're going to pass, yes, the view model. So I'm going to say view model. It's going to be our question view model as such. And so inside here is where we're going to use that view model. And inside of our trivia, I'm going to also call a question or questions like this, which is going to be yet another composable at the bottom here. Okay. And we're going to also require here a view model question as such. So inside here is what we are going to create the user interface. Of course, later we're going to move all of this somewhere else, but for now we can just test things out. So as you see, questions will need a view model, so that means I need to pass here a view model. Just say view model as such. Right, passing this view model there. Okay, let's test a few things. So very good. So now we have our access to our view model. If we go back to our question view model, we know that whenever we say for our data here, we're returning a mutable state wrapped inside of our data or exception, which has our question list and so forth. If we go to our question item as such, you notice the question item is a data class that has answer, category, choices in a list string, and question. Now you'll see that we have the question class, data class. If you go back to our model, this is what represents the entire payload that we have here that we're getting. That's why it says array list containing question items. Right? That's the distinction here. This means inside of, let's get rid of all of this, inside of our main activity here where we're calling our view model, we need to be aware of something. I will have to do something like this to get access to the list that we need. Right? So I'm going to say val questions. I'm going to say is equal to model, in this case just a view model, right? Say view model, right? And I can invoke data. So up here again, I actually have to say Hilt view model like this to instantiate that view model. Very good. So now here, this is wrong. I say questions. So I can see view model dot, and I can get data. And let's see data. Okay, I need to make data public, right? Remember, if we go back to our question view model, right, we need to make that data public so we can actually access it. Okay, so let's see, go back to make sure. Yep, now I can get to that. I'm going to say that value, I'm going to get the value. Notice the value is going to be that wrapper, data or exception. This is very important, as you see. And then I'm going to get the data, which in this case, I want to get the question list, array list, like this. Okay, you would think that this would work, but it's not. So this, I have to do something. I have to say to mutable list. That is very important because the type that we have in our question, which is what we're getting, is an array list. So it's a different implementation of a list, and if you think about it, okay? So now here we are saying we need to convert that into a mutable list, which is needed, of course, in our composables, because we need to mutate it. All right, very good. That's very important. That needs to happen. So in this case here, I can go ahead and say log d just to see if perhaps we can see something. I'm going to say, let's just get the questions. It's a mutable list, of course. I'm going to get, let's say let's just start with this size just to see if this is going to work. Of course, we need to make it nullable. Say size like this as the tag. And let's make sure this trivia is of course called. Let's go ahead and run. So it's running on my device. So it doesn't matter what we see really. Let's see in our log hat here to see if we can actually see that information is being retrieved. All right, let's go. We called it size, the tag name. I'm going to just search for it. And you can see it says here size questions 4877. So this is how many questions we have, right? Now the reason why you may see size first at first time is null, and then it actually gives us the correct number, the size, right? Is because in the beginning the user interface may be showing before it had a chance to go and get the information, right? So in this case here, that's why at first it says null, but then we get the correct information, which is the size of our list. This is real good. This is real good. That means it's working. All the work is that we put in is now paying off. That just means then I can go forward and say something like this, right? Let's put that inside of an if statement. I'm going to say if. In this case, I can say, let me just close this down. Let's say if questions, actually I can go to the view model itself because I want to get more information. I can say data dot, I want to get to the loading, say value dot loading is equal to true. I'm just going to say something like this, log d loading, like that, and then else meaning if loading is not true, it's false, we've gotten the information, I can just go ahead and perhaps loop through. In this case, let's say questions dot for each such. Let's say question item like this. For each question item, I want to do something. Looks like obviously we may get null, so we need to unwrap like this. I'm going to say log d, and for each one of these question items, let's say question item, I'm going to get the question itself. Let's call this result. And I'm going to just test things out here. I'm going to say loading stopped. All right, let's see what this will give us. Say loading. Okay, let's save this. Let's run once again. Remember, I'm running on my device here, so it doesn't matter if you see something. So as long as it's running, you may have, of course, your emulator. So we're just testing to see if we get information here. All right, so there we go. Now you can see I got the result. If I go and say result, let's start with loading. Okay, see, this is perfect because now I went ahead and say loading question. So this ran because loading was true. That's what we said. Questions loading. And once the loading was finished, it says loading questions, loading stopped. And then, of course, I'm going to get the result. Let's get that tag. And voila, you can see we're able to get all of the questions. There are quite a lot. Right? Result, question, he was that, another question, and there you have it. Okay, so this is real good. This is real good because, again, we have done all the work, right? Creating the infrastructure to be able to get information from our JSON, right? In a remote server. And then we are now able to, through our view model, we're able to get that information, but not only just get that list of items, we're able to get even more information because we wrapped that data that we're getting from our source, right? We wrapped it inside of another object that we call a data or exception, which means we were able to add other items, other metadata, pieces of information to our data. So that way we were able to do something like this. We're able to check in our data if loading is true. I hope you're seeing the power of all of this, the advantages that we now have. Because later we can, if loading is true, we can then invoke the circular progress and show to the user. That way the users have this visual cue that indeed things are working in the background. This indeed is the power of wrapping our main data into another class, in this case data or exception class. So make sure you get to this point. You are able to see these results. It's very important. If not, make sure also that you are, first of all, you've set up everything correctly in all of the classes that we've done, question repository, the question view model and so forth, but also the dependencies. And also make sure that you are passing, in this case, in our trivia home as a test here, you are saying HILT view model. So instantiating to say this is a HILT view model and everything is good to go, and passing that view model in our questions, which is a composable, and then we are testing things out here. So we're able to get that information. And don't forget to do this. This questions has to go through this process here. Because of the type compatibility, we have to convert that into mutable list. Otherwise, you're going to have errors. All right, and there you have it. We are able to get all those questions, which means we're able to get everything from our data, which is this guy here. So now we're home free, which means we can now start focusing on building the actual application, in this case, the user interface, which is what people interact with, which is what our app is all about in a sense. But I hope you're seeing here the power of structuring your app this way.